I personally think there is an element of envy maybe in Deontay Wilder when he looks across the pond at Anthony Joshua, and maybe there'll even be somewhat of an element of envy when he looks across at Joseph Parker in New Zealand, because both Joshua and Parker have got a hell of a lot more popularity in their respective countries than Deontay Wilder has in the United States. I feel like Wilder has a chip on his shoulder and he feels that he deserves a lot more respect and a lot more recognition than he actually has. That's the impression that I get from him. Now, he has come out in the past couple of days and he said a bunch of things about Anthony Joshua. He thinks that Klitschko is going to beat Joshua. Maybe that's his genuine opinion. But as you'll hear from some of his comments, which I'm about to quote, some of you may agree that there is an element of envy and resentment there. Now, I'm not knocking him for that, because at the end of the day, he is a competitor. And in fact, if there is an element of envy in Deontay Wilder, that could actually raise his game. Back in the days of Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson, one thing Emmanuel Stewart said when he trained Evander Holyfield for the rematch with Riddick Bowe is that instead of talking about Riddick Bowe for the whole camp, all Evander Holyfield ever talked about the whole time he trained him for that very important rematch with Riddick Bowe was Mike Tyson. He said that Evander Holyfield was extremely jealous of the plaudits that Mike Tyson got from the public and from the press. And he had this obsession with beating Mike Tyson years and years and years before he actually fought him. And that's why, at least according to Manny Stewart, he felt that the Tyson Holyfield fight was a very dangerous fight for Tyson when it actually took place. I believe that was in November 96, the first fight. Most people felt it was going to be a mismatch, but Manny Stewart says he didn't go on public record and say this as far as I'm aware, but he said after the fact that he told Don King, that's a dangerous fight for Mike. Don't let him fight Evander. And Don King told him, what, are you crazy? Like, this is an easy fight. Holyfield's washed up. It was supposed to be a cherry pick. But yeah, Holyfield was so envious of Tyson's popularity that it drove him on to one of the greatest, if not the greatest victory of his whole career, and one of the biggest upsets in boxing history. Anyway, without me going too deep into history, let me actually quote what Deontay Wilder has said here about Anthony Joshua. And I think he makes a lot of valid points. You know, this is not a critique of Deontay Wilder. It's just my interpretation of what he's saying here. I think he makes a lot of valid points, but some of the things seem to indicate there's resentment and envy there. Anyway, quoting Wilder directly, he says, Hearn pushed him into this. He's talking about Joshua here. He says, Hearn pushed him into this. Of course, come on, man. Joshua didn't call Klitschko out. Hearn did that. Hearn is like the new PlayStation with the VC goggles, and Joshua is just a fighter. Most definitely. David Price in the making. Look what happened to David Price. Don't misword me on it. The way they structured David Price, moving him so fast, the whole England was behind him. When he wasn't really proven for real, he was no killer. He ain't really fought no killer, but they had him as the biggest thing in England, and look who came along. How old Tony Thompson was, 40-something years old? Joshua needs time to develop. Of course, tell me one fighter that he done fought that would put him ready for a Klitschko. I think it's Eddie Hearn more so than Joshua want to fight these guys. Eddie Hearn is making a killing off these fighters. He knows what he's doing. When you have a promoter that even before your fight, you've got another damn fight lined up. Come on, man. The boy don't hardly get no kind of time off and break. When you have a fighter that loves to fight and loves to be active, I would love to be in that position. But when you have a fighter, I don't think Joshua likes to fight that often like that. It's more so Eddie Hearn. He do like, well, let's do it. Let's do it. Eddie always got down who I'm fitting to fight. got the TV network, the money and everything. He's making a killing. So when the time comes, I think he don't have no choice but to fight. My heart goes for Joshua, but my mind is with Klitschko. I don't think Joshua's ready for that. I don't think they've prepared Joshua for that. Let's face it, England is known to hype their fighters up. You want to know in England and they love you. And I love that. I love that they have the energy and that they're behind their people. I wish America was the same way. But unfortunately, they wait till you get to the very, very top. And then that's when everybody wants to come around and show love. Over there, it's not the case. And I love them for it. I'm happy for him on that note. But as far as when you fit into fight a Klitschko, someone who's very experienced, that done been through every situation possible, probably every style there is possible, I think it's going to be a difficult fight for him. And their styles complement each other very well. Klitschko's very intelligent and he's a counter puncher. Joshua, even though he's young, he can punch as well, but he don't have no flexibility or nothing. Klitschko loves fighters like that. He loves them. The only reason Tyson Fury beat Klitschko is because he was awkward. The way he would move. He was agile, mobile and hostile. Klitschko is tight. He's like a robot. So those are the words of WBC heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder. And as I said before, I started the quote, he makes a lot of valid points, I believe. In terms of the relationship between Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua, I don't know how much input Joshua has. I'm not behind the scenes. But I do have to say that I was surprised that this Klitschko fight got made. It's surprising to me. Because Joshua really don't need Klitschko. Klitschko's not mandatory for Joshua's IBF belt. So he could have kept on fighting other people and maybe built up to a Klitschko fight down the line. But for them to go for it now, when Joshua's had how many? 17, 18 fights now? It's surprising to me that the fight actually got made. Very surprising. I was one of those people who wasn't keen on Anthony Joshua fighting Charles Martin for the IBF title after however many fights it was then, 15 or 16 fights. Not because I didn't think he could beat Charles Martin, but because once you become a world champion, you are going to be forced basically to up the level of your competition. Now, a lot of people can say what they want about Eric Molina and Dominic Brazil, but it had to be somebody from the IBF top 10 that he was fighting. And eventually you're going to be forced to face mandatories. And I just felt like Anthony Joshua is nowhere near the finished article, nowhere near complete. And it would be better for his development if he don't fight for the world title yet and continues his development process, get him some rounds, get him some experience, and then fight for a title. Because there are going to be titles available. Klitschko's not going to be around forever. So yeah, I feel as though this fight right here against Klitschko, if I was Joshua's manager, and again, I'm an outsider looking in, I haven't seen the sparring sessions, I haven't seen what he's doing behind closed doors, but if I was handling Joshua, I wouldn't put him anywhere near a Vladimir Klitschko when he's had less than 20 fights. I personally wouldn't do it. That doesn't mean he can't win the fight, but I wonder about Eddie Hearn's motivation. Maybe he just really believes in Joshua that much, or maybe Deontay Wilder is making some valid points about Eddie Hearn just looking to use Joshua and just squeeze him for as much cash as he can. Perhaps it's that. I don't know. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below about that. But when I'm talking about the possible envy that Wilder has for Joshua's popularity, I noticed that when Joshua was going to fight Charles Martin, Deontay Wilder said similar things to this. Oh, I'm not sure if Joshua's ready. Martin's dangerous. Martin could win it. This, that, and the other. Joshua blew Martin out. Joshua was then going to fight Brazil. And I believe, I vaguely remember Deontay Wilder saying, oh, Brazil's tough, this, that, and the other. But I don't think he was too convinced by Brazil's chances. But then it came to Eric Molina, and obviously he'd had a tough fight himself with Eric Molina, Deontay Wilder. So he was saying, well, if Molina comes to fight, it's going to be tough for Joshua. It's going to be very dangerous. Joshua blew Molina out with ease. So I think that Wilder in his head has that competitive spirit with Joshua, and Joshua has been able to blow away at least one guy who gave Wilder a tough fight very easily in Molina. So I think Wilder's a little edgy about that. And he's like, you know what? People are starting to say that Joshua's better than me, and I don't like that. So maybe there's part of Deontay Wilder that actually wants Klitschko to win. I don't know. Maybe there isn't. Or maybe there's part of him that, wants Klitschko to win to validate his own status, to make him feel, okay, well, Joshua's not on my level. He just got knocked out. He just got beaten. I'm still unbeaten. Maybe there's an element of that. But regardless of if there is any kind of envy there with Joshua's popularity, the fact that people are saying that Joshua's better than Wilder, and there are a lot of people saying that, regardless of all that, Deontay Wilder did make some valid points, at least in my view. As far as Joshua being a David Price in the making, well, he's far surpassed David Price. David Price never won a world title. David Price never even became European champion. So Joshua's already gone. I mean, Joshua hasn't been European champion either, but I'm saying he's won a world title. And even as an amateur, he far surpassed anything that David Price did. Not only in the Olympics, but also winning a silver medal in the World Games and what have you. So he can't be another David Price, but could he possibly lose to Klitschko? Absolutely. I'm very intrigued to see what happens in this Joshua Klitschko fight. There's so much pressure on Joshua. You can go 12 rounds in the gym. I mean, we saw recently David Price was, he ran out of gas after a couple of rounds against Christian Hammer. But yet his trainer, Dave Caldwell, said that he'd been going 12 rounds in the gym, no problem, with several different sparring partners. So the mental side of the game is so important here. And that's where experience comes in. Klitschko has been 12 rounds in front of huge crowds in big fights many, many times. So he's not at all worried about going 12 rounds. There won't be any anxiety that affects Klitschko going 12 rounds. He's been there many, many times. But for Anthony Joshua, the anxiety might affect his stamina. You just don't know. I would imagine, the fight could turn out to be totally opposite to this. This is heavyweight boxing, people, but I would imagine that the longer the fight goes, the better it will be for Klitschko, which might sound counterintuitive to some people because Joshua being the younger guy, people would think, well, he must have the better stamina, the better engine because he's younger. Depends what kind of fight it is. If it's a technical fight, I think the longer it goes, the better it's going to be for Klitschko. In the early rounds, you would imagine that might be Joshua's best bet to try and get Klitschko out of there early. Overwhelm him, catch him with something big, swarm him. But he has to be careful because Klitschko's got that big left hook, that big right hand. It's dangerous. So it's going to be a fascinating fight, which I could talk about till the cows come home. But for now, I'm going to leave you and let you guys tell me what you think about what Deontay Wilder has said here. What do you think about him saying that Joshua's David Price in the making? What do you think about him saying that Joshua's not ready for Klitschko at this point? And he did mention Tony Thompson being 40-something years old when he beat David Price. And, Klitschko's 40-something years old right now and he thinks he can beat Joshua. Wilder, that is, thinks Klitschko can beat Joshua. He still feels Joshua needs some time to develop. And he believes that Eddie Hearn is really pushing Joshua into these situations. So let me know what you think about all these comments from Deontay Wilder. All right? It's happening. I'm out.